Welcome aboard. It's Captain G with the update for turn 4 of HBG's Operation Iceberg, the Battle of Okinawa. So I'll get to the dead pile, but you can see a lot of losses as they're piling up. Let's start with point 1. So this turn, the Japanese reinforcements appeared not at the end of the turn, but right after the kamikazes were assigned their zones. So what we had was one aircraft dropping off 2 Japanese Marines into each of these zones. We had to roll dice to see if it was a surprise or if the US was expecting it or ready for the attack. Depending on what the Japanese player rolled, surprise or not, that impacted the USAA. And what happened was the force, and it's actually over here, the aircraft and 2 Marines, the force going into this zone was detected and shot down. The force going into this zone was not, and they landed. And there were no US ground forces here, so those Marines secured the base and destroyed the 4 Marine Corps Corsairs, represented by those 4 Marine aircraft in the dead pile. So this base was recaptured by the Japanese from this attack. On the US turn then, he had to move the surviving artillery over here to retake the base. Okay, so that was point 1, this Japanese raid. The next turn, turn 5, again, Japanese reinforcements. This time it's 4 Marines per zone doing a shore raiding into these 2 zones. So even though the US doesn't even have control of this yet, in theory 4 Marines will land here and 4 Marines will land here, and then there are die rolls on whether or not they're detected. And if they are, then they're lost at sea before they get to the zone. Or if they make it to the zone, they get a free round of attack, and then they're there in the contested areas. Certainly the Japanese hope the Marines land here, and I'll get to the status of that position. So some unique surprises for the Japanese even this late in the game, and it cost the Americans 4 of their Marine Corps Corsairs. So that was point 1. Point 2, actually this should have been 2 and then the other one 3, but I reversed them. So let me go to point 3 in order. So with the Japanese kamikazes, most of them were shot down. Only a couple of them got through to roll, and all of them missed except 1. So I only get 1 damage on this carrier, not enough to interrupt their air operations. So no additional aircraft, at least Fleet Marine aircraft, were lost from the US. And each round, as the number of US fighters either stays consistent or the Japanese aircraft go down, the kamikaze damage inflicted is less and less. Now going to turn 2, after all the kamikaze attacks, the US shore bombardment. Egg really invested heavily in his cruisers here that can shore bombard, as well as battleships here that can shore bombard at a longer range, hence they're further away. And he pounded these positions. The pillboxes can protect 1 infantry and 1 artillery per zone. But if you have, say in this zone, 4 or 5 infantry and only 3 pillboxes, then the others are subject to artillery fire. So he's whittling down the Japanese manpower that can move from these mountains into the green zones as best as he can. He cannot do shore bombardment or artillery fire anywhere where there are contested zones. So he couldn't fire into these zones where the Marines and the Army are fighting with the Japanese. So shore bombardment, much more successful for him this turn. Going to point 4, what has had mixed results for him and the Japanese is this ongoing naval battle. The Yamato task force is down to 3 destroyers, 2 hits on the Yamato. The Japanese got to decide what they were going to take hits on. Rather than lose 2 destroyers, they took 2 out of 4, because the Yamato takes 4 to sink. And he keeps reinforcing this with 12 ships, 1 cruiser and 11 destroyers, and now he's down to just 6. That's why there's so many destroyers in the dead pile for the US. But we're treating the movement rules in sea zones similar to land zones. If you're in combat, you can't leave. So the Japanese, while they would love to get into the zones to destroy US landing craft and carriers, we're playing it that they can't move. Don't know if that was the intent or not, but it's not very clear in the rules. So we're just being consistent. So this task force is stuck, and these guys are unable to finish them off. He's got his extra destroyers there that he keeps supplementing to maximize his chances each round. 5 up here in the north, as far as battles, there's nothing going on up here. The Japanese forces in these zones have been wiped out, so the only offer of resistance left are these 3 artillery firing down into the zone. Now that it's been cleared of Japanese, they'll be able to hit. But with this truck and its movement, he can just put 1 infantry on the truck, go up here to secure the airbase, which is his objective. It's an airbase. He has to capture all the air bases to win, and then move the rest of his forces out of range of this artillery. He doesn't have to take this base. And the Japanese here, because of the movement restrictions in mountains, cannot move to recapture the base. So even if the Americans move here, capture the base, and then retreat, they still own the base. The Japanese won't be able to take it back. And there's no landing zone in around here, so even if the Japanese got reinforcements, they couldn't land here. And if they land here, then they have the same movement. They're stuck. So Egg's about to capture this base. Now, he had already bombed it. It is destroyed, so he does not get the 4 aircraft bonus because the airbase is not operational. But he's meeting that victory objective. So all these forces are now available to get back on their LVTs and move by sea, or snake along by ground and move down to the south where he needs the troops. That was point 5. Let's see, where did I do with point 6? I think point 6 is really over here. I wanted to show the reinforcement table. So the first 2 rounds, the Marine Corps, which are the red die, and the Army, had reinforcements in every zone. But in round 3, and now in round 4, these reinforcements that are coming in are only half the strength as prior turns. And when we go to round 5, round 6, round 7, the number of reinforcements for the US continues to dwindle. The Japanese, by comparison, aren't getting any significant reinforcements, but it's putting a lot more strain on the US, particularly with the high casualty rate that they've been suffering. And then the final point here on the map is the ground battles. He is, if you can tell in this zone, AA don't play a role in ground battles, just air. The Japanese have 1 artillery left. All the armor was destroyed. So all this force, plus any reinforcements he deems to send up, needs is 1 hit, and they've captured this airbase, wiped out these kamikaze planes. And then from this force that's engaging here, it suffered some pretty heavy casualties. But once they get these infantry out of these 3 pillboxes, if you can see them there, then they'll capture this airbase as well. And then Japan will have only these 4 remaining kamikazes in this final zone, which will not be good for Japan. So Egg has 1, 2, 3, 4 more objectives after he captures this airbase before victory. He's got to get his forces through these mountain territories, through this capital city to secure this final airbase to win the game in the next 6 turns, because we just finished turn 4. So here you go. Here are all the casualties. The U.S. has lost, what is that, 3, 6, 7 destroyers, 4 of the strategic bombers, a lot of ships damaged, but no more sunk. The 4 Corsairs, all these flamethrower troops, most of them rather, were taken as casualties here. He didn't have any cannon fodder, if you will. I hate to use that term, but he didn't have any. And then Japan lost all their armor, more artillery. They've lost 10, 20, 35, 36 militia, the 4 Marines, 22 infantry. So heavy casualties on both sides, but the balance is starting to go fully US. And that's where we are at the end of 4. Next up will be turn 5, and we'll come back to you then. For Eggman, I'm Captain G, over and out.